The field hospital at RAF Thorpe Abbotts reeked of disinfectant, failing to mask the smell underneath. Blood, burned flesh, aviation fuel soaked into wool uniforms. October 14th, 1943. They called it Black Thursday. 60 bombers hadn't returned. 600 men gone before sunset. Major Thaddeus Garrett stood in the operations room, staring at the mission board. 60 red marks. Each one represented a B-17 Flying Fortress. Each bomber carried 10 men. Simple arithmetic. 600 families would receive telegrams. 600 mothers would answer their doors to find chaplains standing on the porch. The ones who did make it back brought pieces of their dead with them. Lieutenant General Augustus Brennan entered. 52 years old, 3 stars, the entire 8th Air Force on his shoulders. He ignored the junior officers. His eyes went straight to that board covered in red. "Gentlemen, we have a crisis." The room went silent. Outside, ground crews were still pulling bodies from wrecked aircraft. Inside, staff officers tried not to look at each other. Brennan's voice was steady despite his hands trembling. "Schweinfurt, 291 bombers launched this morning. 60 did not return. Another 17 are total losses on the ground. 26% casualties. We cannot sustain operations at this rate." He let the number settle. "The Germans know our escorts turned back at the border. P-47 Thunderbolts have 475-mile range. P-38 Lightnings struggle above 25,000 feet. Our bombers fly the last 200 miles alone. The Luftwaffe waits for exactly that moment." Brennan turned from the board. "Without solving the escort problem, daylight strategic bombing ends. Prime Minister Churchill is already suggesting we adopt British methods. Night raids, area bombing. We hit cities instead of factories because we can't identify targets in darkness. Is that acceptable?" No one spoke. "I have a proposal on my desk recommending suspension of all deep penetration missions until spring. Perhaps indefinitely. The Secretary of War questions our entire strategic approach. The Joint Chiefs wonder if we're wasting aircraft and lives for minimal results. We have one chance remaining to prove this concept works." He opened his briefcase and removed a folder. North American Aviation has modified the P-51 Mustang with a British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Maximum range with drop tanks, 1,650 miles. That's Berlin and back with reserves. Top speed, 440 miles per hour at altitude. Performance equals or exceeds anything Germany fields. An operations captain raised his hand. "Sir, the P-51B entered combat only 5 weeks ago. Limited data exists regarding engine reliability, combat effectiveness, or high-altitude performance in extreme cold." "I'm aware of the limitations, Captain. I'm also aware we're out of alternatives." Brennan closed the folder with finality. "The 354th Fighter Group begins extended escort operations next month. They're the test case. If the P-51 program fails, we transition to night bombing and accept reduced effectiveness. If it succeeds, we potentially change this war's outcome." He scanned each face. "Find me pilots who can prove it works." The meeting adjourned. Officers filed out, discussing logistics and probabilities. Garrett remained behind, studying those 60 red marks. Someone should have protected them. Someone should have stayed with them all the way to target and all the way home. That was 3 months ago. Now it was January 10th, 1944. Evening, RAF Boxted in Essex, England, home of the 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustangs. First unit flying P-51s deep into German territory. First to discover whether this elegant fighter could accomplish what doctrine said was impossible. Garrett walked across the darkening flight line toward his assigned aircraft. P-51B, Mustang serial number 436315. Bare metal finish gleaming silver in the dying light. No nose art yet, no kill markings, just national insignia and tail codes. This particular aircraft had completed 36 combat missions. Tomorrow would be number 37. Technical Sergeant Silas Crane was performing final checks on the Merlin engine. 28 years old. Nebraska farm boy who understood machinery the way some men understood scripture. He could diagnose engine problems by sound alone, feel vibrations through metal skin, and know what was failing before instruments showed trouble. Garrett approached quietly. "How's she looking, Sergeant?" Crane climbed down from the wing root. "Mechanically sound, sir. Oil pressure good. Compression even across all 12 cylinders. But I won't lie to you. This Merlin engine is temperamental in extreme cold. 3 failures in the past 2 weeks. Not from combat damage. Just the engine deciding minus 40 degrees isn't acceptable working conditions." "What's our failure rate?" 80%, sir. 1 in 12. Usually happens on return legs when pilots are already running low on fuel and have no alternatives. Garrett ran his hand along the fuselage, metal cold enough to burn exposed skin. Brass is calling this fighter suicidal. I've heard the talk, sir. I've also seen what she can do when everything works right. Faster than anything Germany has. Longer range than anything we've fielded. That Merlin, when it's happy, sounds like angels singing. Garrett smiled slightly. Let's hope she sings tomorrow. Crane hesitated before speaking again. Sir, permission to speak freely? Always. Why'd you volunteer for this unit? You already completed your combat tour with the Flying Tigers. 86 missions over China. You could have taken a stateside training assignment. Instead, you're here testing unproven equipment against the entire Luftwaffe. Why? Garrett was quiet. He looked up at the cockpit. Imagine strapping in tomorrow morning, flying deep into Germany where hundreds of enemy fighters waited. Coming home? Maybe. Someone has to prove it works, Sergeant. Better it's someone who understands what combat actually looks like. That wasn't the complete answer. The real answer required traveling back 3 years, required opening wounds that hadn't healed. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Garrett was stationed in California when the telegram arrived. His younger brother Michael was a cadet pilot at Wheeler Field, 19 years old, training to fly fighters, dreaming of combat, writing letters about how excited he was to finally get into the fight everyone knew was coming. The Japanese attack caught Wheeler Field completely unprepared. Michael never reached his aircraft. Strafing runs killed him on the tarmac while he was still running toward his plane. Died trying to be a fighter pilot. Died because no one was there to protect him while he was vulnerable. The telegram was 3 sentences. Garrett read it 7 times before the words penetrated. 2 weeks later, a letter from Michael arrived, written before the attack. Garrett still carried it in his jacket pocket. The paper was worn soft from handling. I wish you were here to teach me proper combat flying. The instructors are competent, but you've actually fought. You know what real combat feels like. I hope when this war truly starts, I'll be ready. I hope I can be half the pilot you are. I hope I make you proud. Garrett enlisted the next day. Navy rejected him. Too old at 31. Army Air Force said the same. Then a civilian approached him outside the recruitment office, Office of Strategic Services. They were forming a volunteer group to fly in China. American pilots, Chinese markings, fighting Japan before America officially entered the war. The Flying Tigers. Garrett shipped out February 1942, 18 months flying P-40 Warhawks over Burma and China, 86 combat missions, 16 confirmed victories. Shot down 3 times and walked back to friendly territory each time. Earned a reputation as aggressive, skilled, reliable. But one mission changed everything. May 1942, Japanese strike force heading toward a Chinese supply depot. 20 fighters and bombers. Garrett's flight of 4 P-40s intercepted them at 12,000 feet. Flight leader ordered them to attack the bombers. Standard doctrine: kill bombers, let fighters chase you, use your speed advantage to escape. Garrett saw something else. Below the Japanese formation, a transport aircraft. Unarmed C-47, flying evacuees from Canton. Civilians, medical personnel. Maybe 30 people who would die if those Japanese fighters spotted them. Garrett broke formation. Dove on 4 Mitsubishi Zeros, starting to peel off toward the transport. 1 against 4. Terrible odds. Smart play was follow orders. Hit the bombers. Complete the mission. He engaged the Zeros instead. 6 minutes of violent maneuvering. Garrett used every trick learned in 85 previous missions. Boom and zoom attacks. Using the P-40's superior diving speed against the Zeros' better turn rate. Damaged 2 Zeros enough they broke off. Led the other 2 on a stern chase away from the transport. By the time he shook them and returned to base, his fuel tanks were reading empty. His flight leader was furious. Called him reckless. Said he endangered the mission by abandoning formation. Nearly got him court-martialed. 3 days later, a British doctor from that C-47 found him at the airfield. She'd been treating wounded in Canton for 2 years. Heading home, finally. She shook his hand and said simply, "Thank you for being there." 30 people, 30 lives. Because one pilot chose to be in that exact place at that exact moment instead of somewhere else following orders. That's when Garrett understood. His brother died because no one was there. 60 bombers went down on Black Thursday because no one could follow them into Germany. 600 families, 600 funerals, 600 lives that could have continued if someone had been there. Someone had to prove the P-51 could do what everyone said was impossible. Someone had to be there for those bomber crews. Might as well be someone who already understood the cost of not being there. Garrett volunteered for the 354th Fighter Group the day they announced they needed test pilots for extended-range escort missions. Now he stood on the flight line at RAF boxed at hand, resting on cold metal, contemplating tomorrow. Testing whether one fighter could make a difference. Testing whether being there mattered. Crane's voice brought him back. You should get some rest, sir. Briefings at 0600. I'll rest when I'm dead, Sergeant. That's precisely what concerns me, sir. Garrett smiled despite himself. See you at dawn, Crane. He walked toward the barracks. 1800 hours, 6 in the evening. Sun had set an hour earlier. January in England meant long nights and abbreviated days. Tomorrow, sunrise would come around 8, wheels up at 9:30, over target by 1100, if everything proceeded according to plan. Plans rarely survive contact with the enemy. Garrett knew that better than most. He entered his quarters. Small room shared with 3 other pilots. 2 were already asleep. The third, Captain Robert Vance, sat on his bunk cleaning his service pistol with methodical precision. Vance glanced up. Big day tomorrow, Tad. Every day's significant. True, but tomorrow's mission 37 for the P-51 program. If we lose too many aircraft, if failure rates exceed projections, Brennan pulls the plug. Back to P-47s with limited range. Back to watching bombers die over Germany. Garrett sat on his bunk, removed a notepad and pen, started writing. Vance watched. Another letter to your brother. Yes. He's been gone 3 years, Tad. I know. Garrett continued writing. He'd written 117 letters to Michael. Never mailed any, never intended to, just wrote them and stored them in a footlocker under his bunk. Sometimes it helped pretending Michael was still out there reading these words, still waiting to hear what his older brother learned today. Tonight's letter was brief. Tomorrow we discover if this works. If one fighter can stay with bombers all the way to Germany and back. If we can protect them the way no one protected you. I know you'd volunteer for this if you were here. Probably flying wing making jokes about me getting too old for combat. I'm 33, Mike, ancient for fighter pilots, but I can still fly, still fight. Tomorrow I'll prove this airplane can accomplish what we need. If I don't return, know I tried. Know I did everything possible to be there for those bomber crews, to be the pilot who wasn't there for you. I miss you. Tad. He folded the letter, placed it in the footlocker with the others, locked it, put the key on his dog tags. Vance had finished with his pistol. Ever think about what happens if we actually succeed? If P-51s work and we can escort bombers to Berlin and back? We win the war. Beyond that, for us, fighter pilots, right now we're protecting bombers. Once Germany's air force is destroyed, then what ground attack, strafing missions? That's a fast way to die from flak. Garrett lay back on his bunk. I'll worry about that when we arrive there. Right now I'm focused on tomorrow. He closed his eyes, didn't sleep, just lay there contemplating the mission. 60 B-17s flying to Oschersleben, deep into German territory. Target Focke-Wulf aircraft factory. High value, heavy defenses. Luftwaffe fighter bases surrounding it. The 354th Fighter Group would escort them. 4 flights of 4 P-51s. 16 fighters protecting 60 bombers against however many German fighters appeared. If they appeared. Sometimes the Luftwaffe didn't engage. Sometimes they let bombers through uncontested, then hit them on return when American fighters were low on fuel and options. Garrett had flown enough missions to know the enemy always had a vote. You could plan perfectly, and one sharp German pilot with good instincts would turn everything chaotic. He must have dozed because suddenly someone was shaking his shoulder. Major Garrett, 0600, sir. Briefing in 30 minutes. Garrett opened his eyes. Still dark outside. He checked his watch. 6 in the morning, January 11th, 1944. Mission day, he rose. Dressed, splashed cold water on his face from the basin. Vance and the other pilots were already moving. Getting ready. No one talked much. Normal pre-flight behavior. Everyone processed stress differently. Some talked constantly. Some went silent. Garrett fell into the silent category. Always had. The briefing room was crowded. 16 fighter pilots from the 354th. Intelligence officers. Weather officers. In the back, Lieutenant General Brennan himself. He rarely attended individual mission briefings. His presence signified importance. The intelligence officer pulled back the curtain covering the wall map. A red string stretched from England across the North Sea, over Holland, deep into Germany, terminated at a small town called Oschersleben. Murmurs from pilots. That was far, very far. Gentlemen, today's mission escorts 60 B-17s from the 401st Bomb Group. Target is the Focke-Wulf assembly plant at Uschersleben. This factory produces approximately 100 FW-190 fighters monthly. Destroying it significantly impacts Luftwaffe fighter strength. Distance to target 280 miles from coastline. Total mission time approximately 3.5 hours. You'll rendezvous with bombers over the North Sea, escort to target cover during bomb run, escort back to German border, where P-47 Thunderbolts assume protection for the final leg home. He paused for effect. Expected opposition is heavy. Intelligence indicates 3 Luftwaffe fighter groups in the area. Estimated strength 70 to 90 aircraft, mix of Bf-109s and FW-190s. A pilot raised his hand. Sir, we're 16 fighters against potentially 90 Germans. Bombers have defensive armament. Your job is disrupting massed attacks and keeping Germans off balance. Don't attempt shooting down every enemy aircraft. Focus on breaking up their formations. The weather officer stepped forward. Temperature at altitude minus 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility good. Scattered clouds between 15 and 20,000 feet. Winds from west at 30 knots. Use that on return. Fuel consumption should be nominal at cruise power. He looked directly at the pilots. Monitor engine temperatures carefully. We've experienced oil freezing issues in extreme cold. If your engine runs rough, return to base immediately. Don't try continuing the mission. The intelligence officer resumed. Take off at 0930. Form up over the field. Proceed to rally point at over Great Yarmouth. Meet bombers at 1000 hours. Escort altitude between 23 and 28,000 feet. Stay above bombers. Gives you altitude advantage if you need diving attacks. He checked his notes. One final item. This is mission 37 for the P-51B program. General Brennan is evaluating performance data. Fly smart. Bring your aircraft home. Brennan stood. I'll be brief. You understand what's at stake. The P-51 is our answer to the escort problem, but only if it works. Some believe this fighter is too fragile, too unreliable, too risky for deep penetration. Today you prove them wrong. He walked to the front. I've reviewed all your files. Every one of you volunteered knowing the risks. You're test pilots as much as combat pilots. What you learn today saves lives tomorrow, possibly thousands. So pay attention, take mental notes, come home and teach the next group. His voice hardened. If you must choose between saving your aircraft and saving bombers, save the bombers. Those B-17s carry 10 men each, 600 men total. Your job is getting them to target and bringing them home. Everything else is secondary. He let that settle. Good hunting, gentlemen. Dismissed. Pilots filed out. Garrett remained. Brennan approached him. Major Garrett, a word. They walked outside. Sun was rising, painting clouds pink and orange. Brennan lit a cigarette. I reviewed your file last night. Flying Tigers, 86 missions, 16 kills, shot down 3 times. You possess more combat experience than anyone in this unit. Yes, sir. So you comprehend what I'm about to say. Today's mission is critical, not just for the P-51 program, for the entire strategic bombing campaign. If we can't protect bombers, we can't hit targets that matter. If we can't hit those targets, we can't win this war from the air. He drew on the cigarette. I'm counting on you to lead by example up there. Stay with the bombers. Don't get drawn off chasing individual targets. Keep formation together. Bring everyone home. I understand, sir. Brennan studied him carefully. I've seen your type. Aggressive pilots thinking they can win wars single-handedly. That's not what I need today. I need discipline, restraint. Someone understanding the mission comes first. Garrett met his gaze. Sir, I lost my brother at Pearl Harbor because no one was there protecting him. I watched 60 bombers go down on Black Thursday because our fighters couldn't follow into Germany. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here ensuring those bombers come home. All of them. Brennan nodded slowly. Good, that's what I needed to hear. He dropped the cigarette, crushed it under his boot. One more thing. If the P-51 program fails, I'll catch hell from Washington. But that's my problem, not yours. Your only job today is flying this mission and protecting those bombers. Everything else will resolve itself. Yes, sir. Brennan walked away. Garrett headed to the flight line. Crane was waiting beside the P-51. All set, sir. Checked everything twice. She's as ready as I can make her. Garrett climbed onto the wing, looked into the cockpit. 650 caliber machine guns, 3 per wing, 280 rounds per gun, 1,680 rounds total. Maximum firing time at full rate, approximately 20 seconds continuous. But no one did that. You fired in bursts. 2-3 seconds gave you maybe 30 to 40 attacks before empty. Internal fuel 180 gallons. Drop tanks 150 gallons each. Total 480 gallons. Machines. Range at cruise 1,650 miles. Mission to Oschersleben and back was approximately 700 miles. Substantial margin, unless you had to fight. Combat power burned fuel at 2.5 gallons per minute. Every minute of hard maneuvering cost range. Every dogfight meant less fuel for getting home. Garrett climbed into the cockpit, strapped in. The seat fit perfectly. He'd flown this exact aircraft 20 previous missions. Knew every quirk, every sound the engine made. Crane stood on the wing. Good luck, sir. Thanks, Sergeant. See you in a few hours. Crane climbed down. Garrett worked through pre-flight checklist. Mixture rich. Props full forward. Throttle cracked. Magnetos on. Fuel selector to main tank. He primed the engine. Hit starter. The Merlin coughed. Caught. Roared. That sound. Crane was right. When a Merlin ran clean, it sang. 12 cylinders in perfect harmony. 1,400 horsepower spinning a 4-bladed propeller. The entire aircraft vibrated with barely contained power. Garrett let it warm. Checked gauges. Oil pressure good. Temperature rising normally. Engine running smooth. All 6 guns charged and ready. Tower called. Pioneer flight cleared for takeoff. Wind 270 at 15 knots. Good hunting. Garrett released brakes. The P-51 rolled forward. Tail lifted as speed built. At 100 miles per hour, he pulled back gently, and the Mustang lifted cleanly, climbing into morning sky. 15 other P-51s followed. They formed into 4 flights of 4 aircraft each. Garrett's flight took lead position. Behind him, Captain Vance flew as wingman. 2 more pilots completed the 4-ship element. They climbed to 20,000 feet and turned east toward the rally point. Below them, England spread out in winter browns and greens. Villages, farmland, roads, peaceful, quiet. Hard believing there was a war on. At 1000 hours exactly on schedule, they spotted the bombers. 60 B-17 Flying Fortresses, 4 engines each, 10 guns each, 600 men total spread across 60 aircraft. They flew in tight formation, boxes of aircraft stacked 3-dimensionally. That formation meant overlapping fields of fire. Any German fighter attacking from any angle faced dozens of 50 caliber machine guns. But formation also meant predictability. B-17s had to fly straight and level for bomb runs. Couldn't maneuver aggressively. They were vulnerable without fighter escort. Garrett keyed his radio. Big friend, this is Pioneer Lead. We have you in sight, moving to escort position. The bomber formation leader responded. Pioneer let Big friend. Good to see you. We're counting on you today. The 16 P-51s took positions around the bomber formation. Garrett's flight stayed above and behind at 28,000 feet. High cover, eyes on the horizon, watching for distinctive shapes of German fighters. They crossed the English coast at Great Yarmouth. Ahead, the North Sea stretched gray and cold. Beyond that, Holland. Beyond Holland, Germany. At the German border, P-47 Thunderbolts that had been escorting turned back. Their fuel wouldn't take them farther. From here forward, just P-51s and B-17s. 600 men flying into the most heavily defended airspace in the world. 16 fighters to protect them. Inside one of those B-17s, a young man named Elliot Sawyer was reconsidering his life choices. Sawyer was 22, staff sergeant, ball turret gunner. His station was a plexiglass sphere mounted to the B-17's belly. He sat there with knees drawn up, looking down through the turret at ground 23,000 feet below. This was Mission 19. He needed 6 more to complete his tour and go home. The briefing that morning had been sobering. Oschersleben, deep into Germany, heavy fighter opposition expected. The intelligence officer said it matter-of-factly, but everyone in that room knew what it meant. Someone probably wasn't coming home today. Sawyer had a photograph tucked into his flight suit. His wife, Sarah, their daughter, Emma, born 2 months ago. He'd never seen her in person. Just that photograph mailed from Pennsylvania to England. Just an image of what he was fighting to return to. He prayed before every mission, asked God to keep him safe, to let him see his daughter, to let him go home. So far, God had been listening. 18 missions, 18 times climbing into this ball turret and 18 times climbing back out alive. Today was 19. The intercom crackled. All stations pilot, Crossing into German airspace. Keep sharp. Expect company anytime. That was Lieutenant Nathaniel Harding, 24 years old, from Oregon, cool under pressure. Sawyer trusted him. If anyone could get them through this, Harding could. Beside Harding sat Lieutenant Griffin Walsh, co-pilot, 25 years old, newer than Harding, only 12 missions, but steady, good instincts. Walsh checked instruments. Fuel looks good. Number 3 engine running slightly hot, but nothing critical. Formation's tight. Harding nodded. Keep monitoring that engine. Last thing we need is losing power over Germany. He keyed intercom. Gunners, test your weapons. Short bursts. Make sure everything works. Around the formation, 50 caliber machine guns barked brief bursts. Testing. Making sure cold hadn't frozen actions. Sawyer tested his twin 50s. They worked fine. He'd cleaned them yesterday, made sure everything was properly lubricated. In the ball turret, he had 300 rounds per gun, 600 total. At 500 rounds per minute cyclic rate, that was about 70 seconds continuous fire. But you never fired continuously. Short bursts, 2-3 seconds, conserve ammunition, make every shot count. The formation droned deeper into Germany. Time passed slowly at altitude. Nothing to do but watch and wait and think about things you'd rather not think about. Sawyer counted bomber formations, 60 B-17s, 600 men, 600 lives, depending on those 16 silver P-51s flying cover above. He spotted one of the Mustangs, high in rear, elegant aircraft, beautiful even, all silver catching sunlight. Unlike olive drab P-47s, the P-51s were bare metal, saved weight, gave extra speed. Sawyer had heard rumors. P-51 was untested, unreliable. Some called it a death trap. But right now, looking at those 16 fighters, they seemed like angels. Guardian angels carrying 650 caliber machine guns each. The radio crackled, a bomber pilot's voice tight with tension. Bandits, bandits, 11 o'clock high. Sawyer swiveled his turret, looked up and left, saw them. German fighters, 12 of them, BF-109s by profile, angular, deadly, diving from 30,000 feet, coming in from front quarter. The P-51s reacted immediately. 4 Mustangs peeled off, accelerating to intercept. The lead P-51 went after the German formation leader. Sawyer watched the dogfight develop. The P-51 closed rapidly, fired a burst. Tracers walked across the BF-109's tail. The German snap-rolled, dove away. The P-51 followed him down into clouds. Other Germans scattered. They'd expected hitting bombers unopposed. Instead, they had P-51s all over them. The attack broke up before really starting. But it was a distraction. Sawyer realized that a moment too late. Fighters, 6 o'clock, low 30 plus, contacts. Sawyer's blood went cold. 30 German fighters, coming from behind and below, and the 4 P-51s that had chased the first group were out of position, too far away to intercept in time. He looked up, saw 1 P-51 still high above the bombers, just one. The others were scattered, chasing that diversionary attack. That lone Mustang was the only thing between 60 B-17s and 30 German fighters. Sawyer watched, waited, prayed. The P-51 turned, dove, 1 fighter against 30. Sawyer keyed his intercom. We've got 1 Mustang diving on them, just one. Harding's voice came back tight with controlled tension. Copy. Everyone stays sharp. This is about to get very rough. Garrett saw them the instant his wingmen called the first attack. 12 BF-109s diving from high altitude. Standard German tactic. Classic bait and switch. Draw off escort, then hit bombers with main force. He'd seen this exact play in China. Japanese used the same playbook. Sacrifice a few fighters to pull defenders out of position, then strike with overwhelming numbers where they're vulnerable. Garrett keyed his radio. Pioneer 234, engage high contacts. I'll cover main formation. His wingmen acknowledged and dove after the 12 German fighters. Garrett stayed high. Something felt wrong. 12 fighters was insufficient for a serious attack on 60 bombers. It had to be a feint. Had to be. He scanned the sky methodically. Below bombers, behind them, to the safe side. Looking for the real threat. There, 6 o'clock low, below and behind the bomber formation. Shapes climbing from lower altitude. Many of them. Garrett counted rapidly. Lost count. More than 20, more than 30. A full Luftwaffe fighter group minimum. And his 3 wingmen were 5 miles away chasing decoys. He was alone. The radio erupted. Multiple bomber pilots calling contacts. Voices getting urgent. The main German attack was developing fast. Coordinated. Professional. Garrett did the math in his head. Distance to friendly lines, 300 miles. Bomber speed, 190 miles per hour. Time to safety, 95 minutes. Call it an hour and a half. He had 180 gallons of fuel. Combat power burned 2.5 gallons per minute. That gave him 72 minutes. Exactly enough time to stay with bombers until they reached P-47 range. If he burned fuel at combat power for 72 minutes straight, if his engine didn't fail from thermal stress, if he didn't get shot down, if. He looked at those 30 German fighters climbing toward the bombers with clear hostile intent, looked at his fuel gauge reading 180 gallons, looked at his ammunition counter showing 1,680 rounds, thought about his brother at Pearl Harbor, running toward his fighter, never making it, dying because no one was there. Thought about Black Thursday. 60 bombers, 600 men, gone because fighters couldn't follow them deep enough. Thought about 600 men in those B-17s below him who deserved to go home to their families. Made his choice. Garrett shoved throttle forward to combat power. The Merlin engine screamed in response. The P-51 accelerated hard, nose dropping into a steep dive. One fighter, 30 enemies, 72 minutes. He armed his guns and dove into the largest dogfight of his life. Garrett's P-51 plummeted through 28,000 feet at 420 miles per hour. The Merlin engine's scream filled the cockpit. Wind shrieked past the canopy. G-forces pressed him deep into his seat as the dive steepened. Below 30 German fighters climbed toward the bombers in 3 distinct formations. 10 left, 10 center, 10 right. Textbook Luftwaffe attack doctrine. Multiple attack axes, overwhelming firepower. Divide any defenders, exploit gaps. There was one defender. Garrett selected his target. Rightmost formation. FW-190s from the silhouette. Radial engines, stubby fuselage. Deadly at low altitude, but the P-51 had advantages up here where air was thin and engines struggled for oxygen. He approached from their high 6 o'clock. Sun behind him. Classic fighter positioning. They wouldn't see him until far too late. The lead FW-190 grew larger in his gun sight. Range 400 yards. Closing fast. 300 yards. 200. Garrett's breathing slowed. Heart rate dropped. Combat focus narrowing his world to that single German fighter. 150 yards. Garrett squeezed the trigger smoothly. All 650 caliber Browning machine guns fired simultaneously. The P-51 shuddered violently from recoil. 6 streams of armor-piercing incendiary rounds reached out. 30 rounds per second per gun. 180 rounds per second total. Each projectile carrying 11,000 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. Tracers walked up the FW-190's tail section. Metal shredded. The tail assembly separated from the fuselage violently. The aircraft tumbled, spinning uncontrollably. The pilot never ejected, never had a chance. Timestamp 11:15 and 18 seconds. Kill 1. Garrett hauled back on the stick. 7 Gs crushed him into his seat. Blood drained from his brain toward his legs. Vision narrowed to a pinpoint. Gray edges rushed inward. He eased pressure slightly. Peripheral vision returned grudgingly. The German formations scattered like birds hit by buckshot. They'd been expecting a clear run at undefended bombers. Instead, a silver Mustang materialized from the sun and killed their leader in 2 seconds flat. Garrett climbed back to altitude rapidly, scanned for next threat. Combat was about maintaining tempo. Never let the enemy recover. Keep them reacting instead of acting. There, a Bf-109 attempting to position above the bombers. Solo aircraft, probably a flight leader separated from his element during that initial scatter. Garrett rolled inverted smoothly, pulled the nose through, lined up the shot with practiced precision. The Bf-109 pilot saw him, broke hard right, violent evasive maneuver. Too late. Garrett fired. 3-second burst. 90 rounds from 6 guns. The 109's canopy exploded in a shower of glass and metal fragments. The fighter snap-rolled dove away trailing thick smoke. Timestamp 11:15 and 42 seconds. Kill 2, fuel gauge 178 gallons. He'd burned 2 gallons in 30 seconds of combat maneuvering. Ammunition counter 1,550 rounds remaining. Germans remaining 28. Time to friendly lines 93 minutes. The mathematics weren't favorable, but mathematics rarely mattered in combat. Determination did. Skill did. Willingness to risk everything did. Another FW-190 crossed in front of him. High deflection shot. Difficult. Garrett didn't think. 86 previous missions had burned instinct into muscle memory. Lead the target. Account for closure rate. Account for bullet drop. Fire. 2-second burst. 60 rounds. The 190 staggered mid-flight. Its right wing root erupted in orange flame. Fuel tank ignited. The fighter rolled inverted and fell away burning. Timestamp 11:15 and 58 seconds. Kill 3. 3 German fighters destroyed in 40 seconds. Inside the ball turret of B-17 Hell's Angels. Elliot Sawyer watched the lone Mustang carve through the German formation like an avenging angel. Sawyer had flown 18 previous combat missions. He'd watched P-47 Thunderbolts escort them to the German border, then turn back. He'd watched P-38 Lightnings struggle at high altitude, their Allison engines gasping in thin air. He'd never witnessed anything like this. The P-51 never stopped moving. It dove, climbed, rolled continuously, always aggressive, always attacking, always positioning between bombers and attackers. Every pass resulted in another German fighter falling away, smoking or burning, or simply disintegrating. Sawyer counted carefully. 3 down. The P-51 climbed back to altitude, positioned itself deliberately between bombers and remaining German fighters. 27 Germans left. Still overwhelming odds. Still impossible mathematics. But that one Mustang had shattered their attack before it properly developed. The Germans were regrouping now, trying to form up again. That bought precious time. Lieutenant Harding's voice came over intercom. "Did anyone identify that Mustang's call sign?" One of the waist gunners responded. "Negative, sir. He's not transmitting. Too busy fighting." Griffin Walsh, the co-pilot, spoke quietly with something like awe in his voice. "I counted 3 kills in under a minute. Who is that pilot?" Sawyer watched the silver P-51 hang there in the sky, 4 miles behind the bomber formation. 1 fighter against 27. The pilot should have departed, should have broken off engagement preserved. His aircraft waited for reinforcements. Instead, he attacked again. Garrett observed the Germans reforming. They were learning fast. The scattered formations were coalescing, tightening up. A single fighter couldn't effectively engage a tight formation. Germans would overlap their defensive fire, make it substantially harder to isolate and kill individuals. Smart, professional, dangerous. But Garrett had fought tight formations before. Japanese over China flew in rigid, highly disciplined groups, very difficult to penetrate. The trick was hitting them before they fully formed. Catch them during the transition when they're vulnerable. He dove again without hesitation. The lead element of 4 FW-190s was just beginning to join another 4-ship element, 8 total, still spread out enough to exploit gaps. Garrett approached from their 7 o'clock high, optimal attack angle. The trailing aircraft never detected him. He fired from 300 yards, 2-second burst, 60 rounds. The 190's engine cowlings shattered into fragments. Black smoke poured from ruptured cylinder heads. The fighter rolled away streaming oil that froze instantly in -42-degree air. The formation broke again. Pure instinct. When someone behind you gets killed, you don't maintain formation. You break. You evade. You survive. Fight another day. Garrett had counted on exactly that response. He pulled up vertical, used his diving speed to climb above the scattered Germans. At the apex of his climb, he rolled inverted, looked down through the canopy, selected another target. Below him, a Bf-109 was attempting to rejoin the formation. Alone, exposed, perfect opportunity. Garrett pulled the nose through while inverted. Dove. The 109 grew rapidly larger in his gun sight. He rolled upright at the last moment, fired a precise burst. The 109's right wing folded at the root. Structural failure, either a spar hit or accumulated stress fractures. Didn't matter. The fighter spiraled down completely uncontrollable. Timestamp 11:16 and 30 seconds. Kill 4. Garrett climbed back to altitude. His hands were growing cold inside his gloves despite the cockpit heater running. At -42 degrees outside, the heating system could barely maintain cockpit temperature. His breath fogged the canopy interior. He wiped it clear with his glove. Visibility was critical. The Germans were reorganizing. 26 fighters now formed into 2 large groups, 13 and 13. They weren't attempting to reach the bombers anymore. They were focused entirely on him, on eliminating this one troublesome American fighter who'd already killed 4 of their comrades. Good. That was precisely the point. Keep them engaged. Keep them defensive. Keep them worried about him instead of attacking bombers. Every second they spent dealing with him was a second 600 bomber crewmen stayed alive. But now both German formations dove toward him simultaneously. 13 from left, 13 from right, attempting to box him in. Classic pincer movement. Garrett turned into the left group immediately. Aggression, always aggression. Defensive flying got you killed eventually. He closed head-on with the lead element. 13 fighters in an intimidating wall. They opened fire at 600 yards. Far too early. Rounds fell away harmlessly before reaching him. Poor fire discipline. Probably newer pilots. Garrett held his course rock steady. 500 yards. 400. 300. At 250 yards, he fired. 3-second burst. 90 rounds. His tracers converged on the center aircraft AF-190. Hits peppered the fuselage. The fighter's nose pitched down sharply. Garrett had perhaps 2 seconds before they'd flash past each other at combined closure speed, exceeding 700 miles per hour. He kicked left rudder hard. The P-51 skidded sideways. Brought his guns to bear on the next fighter. Fired. 1 second. 30 rounds. The Bf-109 broke hard right, trailing smoke from its Daimler-Benz engine. Coolant leaked white against blue sky. Timestamp 11:17 in 10 seconds. Kill 5. They flashed past each other. One moment, 13 German fighters filled his windscreen. Next moment, they were gone behind him, already turning to pursue. Garrett looked right. The other group of 13 was turning in hard, committed to their attack run. No escape now. He rolled hard right, pulled savagely. 8 Gs. Vision went completely gray. Tunnel vision. He grunted forcefully, performing the anti-G straining maneuver, forced blood back toward his brain. Vision cleared slightly. The 13 Germans were spreading out. Standard tactic against a single fighter. Surround him, get him turning, bleed his energy, then pounce when he's slow and vulnerable. Garrett knew this dance intimately. He'd performed it over China against 4 Zeros simultaneously. The trick was never letting them dictate terms. He selected one fighter on the formation's edge, a Bf-109, turned hard toward it aggressively. The 109 turned away. Defensive reaction. Garrett followed building speed in the turn. The 109 pilot saw him coming, broke harder, pulled tighter. But the P-51 wasn't trying to outturn him. Garrett extended away using superior speed. Built separation. Climbed. By the time the 109 completed his defensive turn and looked for the Mustang, Garrett was above him and then diving back down with speed advantage. The 109 pilot saw him finally. Far too late. Garrett fired cleanly. The tail section disintegrated. Timestamp 11:17 and 52 seconds. Kill 6. But the other 12 Germans from that formation were on him now, coming from multiple directions simultaneously. Garrett couldn't fight 12 at once. No one could. He dove. Full throttle. The P-51 accelerated past 450 miles per hour. The Germans followed but couldn't match his speed. The Mustang was faster in level flight and substantially faster in the dive. Garrett extended away, built energy, climbed back up. By the time he leveled off, he'd put 2 miles between himself and the nearest German. Precious breathing room. Reset. Assess. Attack again. The rhythm of combat. Fuel check 160 gallons. 15 minutes of combat elapsed. 40 gallons burned. Ammunition check 1,300 rounds remaining. 380 rounds expended. Approximately 20 attacks remaining if he maintained 3-second bursts. Time to friendly lines 85 minutes. Germans remaining 24. His engine temperature gauge was climbing steadily. The Merlin was running hot. All that combat power. All those high G maneuvers generating tremendous heat. At minus 42 degrees outside, the temperature differential was causing thermal stress issues. Garrett monitored the gauge carefully. Still in green range, but approaching yellow caution zone. If it reached red, he'd have to throttle back or risk catastrophic engine failure. He couldn't throttle back. Not with 24 German fighters still hunting him actively. The Germans regrouped yet again, but differently this time. They'd watched him for 12 minutes, observed his tactics, identified his patterns. They were learning, adapting. 8 fighters climbed to 26,000 feet. High and conspicuous, obvious bait. 16 more dropped lower, disappearing below the bomber formation at 18,000 feet. A trap, clear as day. The high 8 were bait. When Garrett dove on them, the low 16 would climb up and box him in, cut off escape routes, end this fight decisively. Garrett saw the trap developing, understood exactly what they were attempting. He attacked anyway. Sometimes the only way out is straight through. Garrett's internal monologue ran cold calculations even as he committed to the attack. He could depart now, break east, use speed advantage. Germans couldn't catch him if he ran. He'd make England with fuel to spare. 600 men in those bombers would likely die. Maybe not all, but many. Without fighter cover, Germans would tear into that formation methodically. 60 B-17s would become 50 or 40. Statistics of death, mathematics of loss. Each bomber carried 10 men. 30 bombers destroyed meant 300 dead, 300 telegrams, 300 families. His brother's face flashed through consciousness. 19 years old, running toward his plane at Wheeler Field, never reaching it. No one there to protect him when he was vulnerable. Garrett was here now. He could protect these 600, or he could save himself. He thought about those 117 letters in his footlocker, all saying the same thing in different words. I'm sorry I wasn't there. Not this time. Not today. Garrett shoved throttle to the stop. The Merlin screamed in protest. He rolled inverted and dove at the high-8 German fighters at 60 degrees. Airspeed built rapidly, 460, 480, 500 miles per hour. The P-51's dive limit was approximately Mach 0.75. At 500 miles per hour indicated he was approaching that limit. The controls became mushy. Compressibility effects. Air couldn't flow smoothly over control surfaces at those speeds. He was committed completely now. The 8 German fighters filled his windscreen. They held formation perfectly, waiting for him to get close. The 16 below were climbing rapidly. He could see them peripherally, coming up fast. Timing would be critical. 300 yards. Garrett selected the lead FW-190, centered it precisely in his gun sight, fired, and all 6 guns hammered. Armor-piercing incendiary rounds walked methodically from the 190's tail to its cockpit. The canopy shattered. The fighter rolled inverted immediately. Garrett continued firing. 2 more seconds. The 190's pilot bailed out. White parachute blossomed at 23,000 feet. Timestamp 11:24 and 40 seconds. Kill 7. Garrett pulled back hard on the stick. 7 Gs. Vision tunneled severely. Blood drained rapidly. He eased back slightly. Vision returned partially. The 16 fighters climbing from below were exactly where he'd anticipated. 3,000 feet away and closing fast. Their lead element pulling up hard to intercept him. Garrett rolled inverted, dove directly into them. The German element leader saw a P-51 diving upside down directly at his formation at 500 miles per hour. His brain struggled to process the insanity of it. He broke left reflexively. Self-preservation overrode tactical discipline. His wingmen followed instinctively. 3 more fighters breaking with him. The formation scattered. Garrett rolled upright, selected the last fighter in the braking element, fired precisely. 3 seconds, 90 rounds. The FW-190's tail section separated violently. Control surfaces completely gone. The fighter entered a flat spin, no recovery possible from that. Timestamp 11:25 and 15 seconds. Kill 8. But the maneuver had cost him significantly. He'd burned energy in that inverted dive. Airspeed down to 320. Altitude down to 20,000 feet. And 12 German fighters above him, diving down with energy advantage. Garrett was out of position. Low and slow. Classic fatal mistake. Low altitude, low energy. Every fighter pilot's nightmare scenario. The 12 Germans above recognized the situation immediately. They dove on him together in a coordinated attack. Garrett shoved throttle forward, demanded everything the Merlin could give. Build speed, build energy. He needed both desperately to survive the next 30 seconds. 340 miles per hour. 360. The Germans were closing their dive, giving them substantial speed advantage. Garrett pulled up, climbing not away from them, toward them, head-on engagement again. The Germans hadn't expected that response. A pilot low and slow should extend away, build separation, reset the engagement on better terms. Garrett climbed straight at them deliberately. Both sides opened fire at 400 yards. Garrett's tracers reached out aggressively. The Germans' tracers reached back, lines of light connecting the aircraft like deadly threads. At 200 yards, Garrett's rounds found their mark. A Bf-109. Hits concentrated along the wing route. The 109 rolled away trailing smoke. Timestamp 11:25 and 52 seconds. Kill 9. The Germans broke reflexively. All 12 scattered to avoid collision at combined closure rate at exceeding 800 miles per hour. That gave Garrett the opening he desperately needed. He pulled vertical using what little energy remained. Climbed above them. But his right outboard gun stopped firing. The bolt indicator light on his instrument panel illuminated red. Right outboard gun jammed. Garrett knew why immediately. Temperature cycling. The gun had been firing in short bursts for 11 minutes, cycling between 300 degrees when firing and minus 42 degrees between bursts, metal expanding and contracting repeatedly. Eventually, something gives. The bolt had seized mid-cycle, 6 guns down to 5. Ammunition counter 1,200 rounds remaining on 5 guns. He'd lost approximately 17% of his firepower. The remaining 5 guns would have to work harder, fire longer bursts, which meant they'd heat up faster, which meant higher risk of additional jams. This was how aircraft died over Germany. Not from single catastrophic hits, but from incremental degradation. One gun fails, then another, then engine runs rough, then controls get mushy, death by 1,000 cuts. Garrett climbed back to 26,000 feet. The Germans were reforming below him, 22 fighters remaining. They weren't breaking off. They knew they had the advantage. Numbers, fresh aircraft, all guns working. Time check 11:26. 14 minutes since combat started. 73 minutes to friendly lines. Fuel 145 gallons. 35 gallons burned. The Germans formed up tighter this time. 2 formations, 11 and 11. They weren't spreading out anymore. Mass and discipline. Professional pilots adjusting tactics based on observation. Both formations climbed toward him simultaneously. Garrett turned into the nearest group. Dove. Selected a target on the edge. FW-190. Fired. 2 seconds. 60 rounds from 5 guns. The 190's engine cowling exploded violently. Pieces flew back, impacting the cockpit. The fighter rolled away, black smoke pouring from the engine. Timestamp 11:27 and 30 seconds. Kill 10. Garrett pulled up hard. The other formation of 11 was turning in aggressively. He climbed above them. They followed determinedly. He hammer-headed at the apex, rolled inverted, dove back down onto their tails with speed advantage. The Germans were committed to their climb, couldn't reverse quickly enough. Garrett had them perfectly positioned. He lined up the trailing Bf-109, fired, 1 second, 30 rounds. The 109's tail sheared off cleanly. Structural failure. The aircraft tumbled uncontrollably. Timestamp 11:28 and 10 seconds. Kill 11. But his right inboard gun stopped firing. Same problem. Temperature shock, metal contraction, bolt seizure, 6 guns down to 5, now 5 down to 4, 4 guns remaining. Garrett calculated rapidly. Approximately 300 rounds per gun at this point. 1,200 rounds total. 20 attacks maximum if he maintained 3-second bursts. Fewer if he had to fire longer to compensate for reduced firepower. And 20 German fighters still attempting to kill him. The Germans split into 2 groups again. 10 and 10, but this time they didn't climb or dive. They spread out horizontally. One group went left, one group went right, attempting to force a choice. If he turned left to engage one group, the other would have free access to bombers. If he turned right, same problem. If he stayed center, both groups would engage him from opposite sides simultaneously. No good options existed, only bad options and worse options. Garrett chose left, turned hard, dove on the left group of 10. They saw him coming. Tighten formation. This time they didn't scatter. They held formation, overlapping fields of fire. If Garrett got close, all 10 would shoot simultaneously. He came in anyway, fast and high, dove through their formation at 450 miles per hour, fired at the lead aircraft as he passed. 3 seconds, 90 rounds from 4 guns. Hits. The Bf-109's wing folded catastrophically. The fighter spiraled away. Timestamp 11:29 and 40 seconds. Kill 12. But the other 9 Germans fired as he passed. Tracer rounds converged on his flight path. Most missed, not all. Something impacted his left horizontal stabilizer. Garrett felt the strike. The aircraft shuddered violently. Control response changed immediately. Mushy, the left stabilizer, had sustained damage. Probably a 20mm cannon round. Maybe just 13mm machine gun fire. Didn't matter. Damage was damage. Another round clipped his right aileron. Impacted the trailing edge. More control degradation. The P-51 was accumulating battle damage. Still flying, still fighting, but degrading with every pass. Garrett checked his fuel gauge. 120 gallons. 17 minutes of combat elapsed. 60 gallons burned, close to projected consumption rate. 70 minutes to friendly lines remaining. He checked his ammunition counter. 1,080 rounds remaining on 4 guns. He checked the sky around him. 19 German fighters, still aggressive, still dangerous, still professional. 60 B-17 bombers below him, still flying, still alive, still depending on him. Because he'd stayed, because he'd fought, because he refused to abandon them. The Germans formed up again, all 19, line abreast formation, spread across 2 miles of sky, a wall of fighters, a hammer ready to fall. They were done being cautious, done being tactical. This was overwhelming force, 19 fighters in a line. When they opened fire, it would create a curtain of lead half a mile wide. No evasion possible, no clever maneuvering. Fly through it or die trying. Garrett turned toward them deliberately, 19 fighters ahead, 4 guns working, 1,080 rounds, 70 minutes to safety. The distance closed steadily, 2,000 yards, 1,500, 1,000, 700. The Germans opened fire at 700 yards. Too early again. Overager. Rounds fell away before reaching him. Poor fire discipline costing them. Garrett held his course perfectly steady, 600 yards, 500, 400. At 350 yards he fired. 3 seconds, 90 rounds from 4 guns. His tracers converged on the center aircraft. A Bf-109. Direct hits along the wing route. The fuel tank detonated. Orange fireball at 23,000 feet. The explosion was massive, brilliant, debris everywhere. The formation split around it reflexively. Germans braking left and right to avoid wreckage. Garrett dove through the gap created by the explosion. Pulled up hard on the other side. Timestamp 11:31 and 20 seconds. Kill 13. He climbed, rolled, assessed the situation rapidly. 18 German fighters regrouping behind him. They'd lost 13 aircraft, 13 pilots, 13 comrades. To one Mustang, they were angry now. This had become intensely personal. Garrett's fuel gauge read 95 gallons, ammunition counter read 990 rounds. 67 minutes to friendly lines. The mathematics were getting progressively tighter. Fuel consumption was tracking projections, but ammunition expenditure was higher than optimal. 18 targets remaining, 990 rounds, approximately 15 attacks available. 18 targets, 3 short, so he'd have to make difficult choices soon, very soon. The Germans reformed tighter than ever before. 18 fighters in a compact formation. No gaps, no stragglers, pure discipline, pure professionalism. They climbed toward him methodically, slow, steady, patient. They had time. He didn't. Garrett climbed higher, 28,000 feet, 29, 30,000. The Germans followed. Their rate of climb was slower. The P-51 had superior high-altitude performance. But Garrett wasn't trying to escape. He was gaining altitude advantage, setting up for another attack, creating opportunities. At 31,000 feet, he rolled inverted, looked down through the canopy at the German formation 3,000 feet below. Dove. This time he came straight down. Vertical dive, airspeed building explosively. 440, 460, 480. The Germans saw him, too late to maneuver effectively. The formation tightened but couldn't scatter. Not at this altitude, not this fast. Physics limited their options. Garrett selected a target, fired. The 4 remaining guns hammered. 2 seconds, 60 rounds. The FW-190 staggered under the impact. Smoke. Fire. The pilot bailed out immediately. Timestamp 11:33 and 50 seconds. Kill 14. But the dive cost him dearly. He blew past the German formation doing nearly 500 miles per hour. Had to pull out below them. The pullout loaded 8 Gs on the airframe. Metal groaned. The damaged stabilizer and aileron made the aircraft vibrate severely. He pulled through successfully, leveled off at 20,000 feet, started climbing back up immediately. The Germans dove after him, all 17. They had altitude advantage now. They pressed it aggressively. Garrett checked his ammunition counter. 930 rounds, 17 German fighters diving on him. Mathematics. If he maintained 3-second bursts, that was approximately 15 more attacks. 17 targets. Still too short. He'd have to get creative. The Germans spread out as they dove, attempting to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. 7 from left, 10 from right, coordinated assault. Garrett turned left, toward the 7, committed fully. 3 seconds, 60 rounds, 1 FW-190 smoking heavily. Timestamp 11:34 and 30 seconds. Kill 15. Maybe, hard to confirm in the chaos. 870 rounds remaining. He pulled hard right, The 10 Germans from the right were closing fast, opening fire at 300 yards. Garrett fired back aggressively. 3 seconds. The lead Bf-109 took multiple hits. Pieces separated. The fighter snap-rolled violently. Out of control. Timestamp 11:35 and 10 seconds. Kill 16. 810 rounds remaining. But his left inboard gun stopped firing. Temperature cycling again. Thermal stress. Bolt seized. 4 guns down to 3. 3 guns remaining. Approximately 270 rounds per gun. 810 rounds total. 16 German fighters still operational. Garrett's hands were shaking noticeably now. Not from fear, from cold combined with fatigue and developing hypoxia. He'd been pulling high-G maneuvers for 21 minutes straight. His oxygen mask felt loose. Each breath came harder. The Germans regrouped. 16 fighters. But they were changing tactics again. They'd learned every trick Garrett possessed. They knew his patterns, his style, his preferences. They'd adapted. They spread out wider, stayed disciplined, refused to scatter when he attacked, made him work for every single shot. Smart, professional, experienced, dangerous. Garrett checked his fuel. 75 gallons. Checked his time. 63 minutes to friendly lines. Checked his ammunition. 810 rounds on 3 guns. The numbers weren't adding up anymore. He couldn't sustain combat at this intensity for another hour. Something had to give. Something critical. Something final. The Germans formed into 2 groups of 8. They climbed to his altitude, positioned on either side of him. 4 miles separation, boxing him in. Then they turned in simultaneously. Both groups converging on him from opposite directions. A sandwich, classic air combat maneuver. Force the target to choose one threat. The other gets a free shot. Simple, effective, usually fatal. Garrett turned toward the right group, dove slightly, built speed, closed distance rapidly. At 400 yards he fired. 2 seconds. The lead FW-190 took hits. Engine fire. The fighter rolled away trailing flame. Timestamp 11:36 and 40 seconds. Kill 17. Maybe. Engine fire didn't guarantee destruction. 750 rounds remaining. But the left group was on him now. 8 fighters, all firing simultaneously. Tracer rounds filled the sky around him. Red lines converging on his position. Garrett rolled hard left, pulled savagely. The rounds passed above his canopy, below his wings. Close, far too close, dangerously close. 1 round punched through his left wing. Another clipped his fuselage behind the cockpit. More damage accumulating. The P-51 shuddered. The engine coughed once. Recovered. Kept running. How much damage could this aircraft absorb before something critical failed catastrophically? Garrett didn't want to discover that answer. He climbed rapidly, fast, used his last bit of energy advantage, got separation from the 15 Germans pursuing him relentlessly. At 28,000 feet, he leveled off, looked around quickly. Fuel 58 gallons. Ammunition 750 rounds on 3 guns, times 60 minutes to friendly lines. Germans 15 fighters, all operational, all aggressive, all determined to end this. This wasn't sustainable. The mathematics had finally caught up completely. He couldn't fight 15 German fighters for another hour with 3 guns and 58 gallons of fuel. Something had to change. Something fundamental. The Germans reformed below him. 15 fighters in tight formation. They climbed toward him, slow, methodical, confident, patient. They knew they had him. Numbers, firepower, time, and each factors favored them decisively. Garrett turned toward them one more time. Dove. Selected the trailing fighter. Fired. 1 second burst. 30 rounds from 3 guns. The Bf-109 took hits, smoking. Maybe damaged significantly, maybe not. Garrett couldn't tell in the chaos. He pulled up, extended away, climbed. Ammunition counter 720 rounds. The Germans turned, followed patiently. They weren't hurrying. They could afford patience. Time was their ally, his enemy. Garrett glanced at the bomber formation, still there, still flying. 4 miles ahead, getting closer to friendly lines with every passing minute. Closer to safety, closer to P-47 cover, closer to survival. Because he'd stayed, because he'd fought, because he'd traded his fuel and ammunition and eventually his aircraft and possibly his life to buy them time, to keep them alive, to get them home. The Germans formed up again, all 15, line abreast, coming at him with grim determination. Garrett turned into them. prepared to fire. This would be attack number, he'd lost count. Didn't matter anymore. He squeezed the trigger. The guns fired. 1 second, 25 rounds from 3 guns. Then clicked. Click, click, click. Empty. He checked the ammunition counter, 720 rounds displayed. But the guns weren't firing, wouldn't fire. Feed malfunction. The ammunition belts had jammed, or rounds weren't feeding properly from the ammunition boxes, or something mechanical had failed in the feed system. Didn't matter what specifically. The result was identical. 0 rounds available to fire. Garrett was Winchester. Out of ammunition. Timestamp 11:38 and 14 seconds. 24 minutes of continuous combat. 3 guns working mechanically. 720 rounds theoretically remaining in ammunition boxes. But none of them could reach the firing chambers. He was empty, defenseless, vulnerable. The 15 German fighters were 400 yards away and closing steadily. They didn't know he was empty yet. Not for certain. But they'd figure it out soon. The very next time, he didn't fire. The next time he maneuvered defensively but didn't shoot back. Then they'd know. And then they'd swarm him. 15 against 1 defenseless aircraft, with no way to fight back. Garrett looked at his fuel gauge. 55 gallons. Perhaps 53 minutes of flying time at reduced power. The bombers were 58 minutes from friendly lines. He could leave now. Break east. Run for England at maximum speed. Make it home with fuel to spare. The Germans couldn't catch a P-51 at maximum continuous power. He'd survive. Live to fight another day. 600 men in those bombers would face 15 German fighters with 0 protection. Some would die, maybe many. Statistics and probability said heavy casualties were inevitable without fighter cover. He looked at those B-17s below him, thought about the ball turret gunner who'd been watching this entire fight develop, thought about the pilots flying straight and level formations trusting him completely to keep them safe, thought about his brother at Pearl Harbor, thought about Black Thursday, thought about every single mission where someone should have been there but wasn't. Every time absence cost lives, he was here now, right now. In this exact moment, in this exact place. Empty guns, critical fuel, damaged aircraft, 15 enemy fighters hunting him. 58 minutes to safety. Garrett made his decision. He armed his guns. The arming switches clicked, even though there were no rounds to fire. Purely psychological. For him, for the Germans. He turned toward the 15 German fighters deliberately and attacked. Garrett dove at the 15 German fighters with empty guns clicking uselessly. They saw him coming. Formation tightened automatically. They expected him to fire at 300 yards. Standard engagement range. He'd done it repeatedly throughout this fight. Pattern recognition, predictable behavior. 300 yards. Garrett didn't fire. Couldn't fire. He kept diving aggressively. 200 yards. The Germans held formation rigidly, waiting for his guns to open up, waiting for those familiar tracer rounds they'd watched all day. 100 yards. Still no fire from the Mustang. This was unusual. Wrong somehow. The German element leader broke instinctively. Self-preservation overrode discipline. When a fighter closes to 100 yards without shooting, something's wrong. Either the pilot is insane, or it's an elaborate trap with hidden threats. His wingmen followed reflexively. 4 fighters breaking left. The formations scattered like startled birds. Garrett pulled up hard, climbed away cleanly. He'd scattered them without firing a single round, because they didn't know his guns were empty. They saw a P-51 diving aggressively and assumed operational weapons. Why else would he attack? Logic demanded armed threat. Psychology, the oldest weapon in warfare. Older than gunpowder. Older than steel. The Germans regrouped 400 yards distant. Garrett could see the lead pilot's head turning in his cockpit, looking at the Mustang, probably wondering why it hadn't fired at optimal range. Testing now. They were testing him, probing for weakness. 2 Bf-109s separated from the formation, came at him from opposite directions. Standard scissor attack. Force him to choose one threat, the other gets a clear shot. Textbook tactics. Garrett turned into the nearest 109 immediately. Dove. Closed to 200 yards rapidly. The 109 held his course, waiting to see if the Mustang would fire. Garrett didn't fire. Couldn't fire. He closed to 100 yards. 80, 60 feet. The 109 broke hard right. Dove away, disengaged completely. The second 109 was approaching from Garrett's left. Garrett rolled left aggressively, turned into him hard. The 109 saw the Mustang turning toward him with clear hostile intent. He broke off early, didn't even wait to confirm whether Garrett would shoot. Two German fighters neutralized without ammunition. Pure intimidation, pure bluff, pure psychological warfare. But the Germans were learning rapidly, very rapidly. Elliot Sawyer watched intently from his ball turret. He'd been counting carefully. The P-51 had attacked 3 times in the past 2 minutes. No tracer rounds visible. No gun smoke. No muzzle flashes. Either the pilot was being extraordinarily selective with ammunition, or he was completely out. Sawyer keyed his intercom urgently. "Lieutenant Harding, sir, that Mustang hasn't fired in 2 minutes." Harding responded immediately with concern in his voice. "You certain?" "Yes, sir, absolutely certain. I've been watching closely. 3 attacks, 0 tracers, no gun smoke whatsoever." Griffin Walsh, the co-pilot, spoke quietly with dawning realization. "He's out of ammunition." "Then why isn't he leaving?" Harding asked the question everyone was thinking. No one had an answer. No logical answer existed. Sawyer watched the silver P-51 intently. It was positioning for another attack, diving on a group of 3 German fighters. They saw him coming, held formation longer this time, waiting deliberately to see if he'd shoot. He didn't shoot, got within 50 yards. The Germans broke finally. All 3 scattered like frightened sparrows. Sawyer understood then completely. The Mustang pilot was bluffing. He had 0 ammunition but was still fighting, using pure aggression and positioning to make Germans think he remained armed, making them react defensively even though he literally couldn't hurt them. It was brilliant. It was insane. It was simultaneously both. Walsh's voice came over the intercom, quiet, almost reverent. "That pilot is either getting the Medal of Honor or a court-martial, possibly both." Harding laughed shortly, sharp stress relief. "My money's on the medal. Anyone crazy enough to keep fighting with no ammunition deserves it." Garrett climbed back to 28,000 feet. Fuel gauge read 49 gallons. He'd been fighting for 27 minutes continuous. 56 minutes remaining to friendly lines. The mathematics were becoming impossible. 49 gallons at combat power gave him approximately 20 minutes. At reduced cruise power, maybe 35 minutes. He needed 56, at least 21 minutes short even at minimum consumption. He'd have to reduce power significantly, throttle back, conserve every drop of fuel. But throttling back meant less speed, less energy, less ability to maneuver effectively. Against 15 German fighters, that was guaranteed suicide, except he was already committing suicide. Fighting with 0 ammunition, damaged aircraft, critical fuel. Everything about this entire situation was suicidal. But 600 men were still alive in those bombers below, still flying steadily, still heading home towards safety, because he'd stayed, because he was still here, still fighting, still forcing Germans to deal with him instead of attacking defenseless bombers. The Germans formed up again, but differently this time. 8 fighters stayed together in tight formation. 7 broke off decisively, headed directly toward the bombers with clear intent. They'd figured it out, not completely, perhaps, but enough. That Mustang wasn't shooting, probably low on ammunition, maybe completely out. Time to test the theory by going after the actual targets, the bombers, the mission objective. Garrett saw the 7 German fighters accelerating toward the bomber formation. He turned hard, dove aggressively, intercepted them at 19,000 feet, came in from their 7 o'clock high, optimal attack angle. The 7 Germans saw him clearly. They held formation, waiting to see if he'd fire. Garrett got within 30 feet of the trailing FW-190, close enough to see the pilot's face through the canopy clearly, close enough to read the fear in his expression. The German looked back, saw the Mustang, saw the propeller spinning inches from his tail. No muzzle flashes, no gun smoke, nothing. The German broke suddenly, hard left, dove away frantically. The formation scattered, all 7. They hadn't confirmed definitively the Mustang was empty, but they weren't willing to risk it. Better safe than dead. Garrett chased 2 more fighters aggressively, got close to both. Neither stayed to discover if he'd shoot. They broke off, disengaged, fled. 7 German fighters neutralized, driven away from bombers, without firing a single round, without any ammunition whatsoever. But the other 8 Germans were diving on him now fast. They'd seen everything, watched him chase their comrades, watched him not fire repeatedly. They knew, or strongly suspected with high confidence, or they suspected strongly, strong enough to test. The 8 fighters came at him in tight formation. Not scattered, not cautious. Aggressive, confident, determined. Garrett turned into them reflexively. Same as always. Aggression met with aggression. Never defensive, never backing down. They didn't break. They held formation perfectly. Close to 300 yards. 200. Professional discipline. Garrett lined up his gun sight on the lead aircraft precisely. Put his finger on the trigger deliberately. Made the motion of firing. The Germans would see his aircraft jerk slightly from recoil that wasn't happening. See his guns elevate slightly from action that wasn't occurring. Theater. Performance art at 500 miles per hour. Life and death Shakespeare. 100 yards. The lead German held his course. This was the ultimate test. Stay or break. Courage versus survival instinct. 50 yards. Garrett could see every detail of the Bf-109. Every panel line, every rivet. The pilot's face behind armored windscreen, and terror and determination combined. 40 yards, 30, 25. The German broke, hard left, nearly stalled. Recovered desperately, dove away. His wingman followed immediately. The formation broke. Not as quickly as before. Not as completely. But they broke. Fear won over discipline. Garrett had won this round, but barely, narrowly. The Germans were getting braver with each encounter, testing more aggressively. Soon one of them would call his bluff definitively, would hold formation stubbornly, would realize the Mustang wasn't shooting because it absolutely couldn't shoot. Then this would end, fast and violent and final. Time check 11:41, 27 minutes of combat, 53 minutes to friendly lines remaining. Fuel 42 gallons. The mathematics weren't working at all now. Even at absolute minimum power, he had maybe 40 minutes of flying time. He needed 53, 13 minutes short minimum. He could glide portions, shut down the engine entirely. Glide. The P-51 had a reasonable glide ratio. Might make it to friendly lines with no power at all, might. Or he could crash somewhere in Germany, become a prisoner, or die in the crash. Either way, he wouldn't be here protecting these bombers for those final critical minutes. Garrett looked at the bomber formation. 4 miles ahead, still flying, getting closer to safety with every passing second, every minute of delay, every moment of survival. Closer because he'd bought them time, traded his fuel and ammunition and eventually his aircraft and possibly his life for their safe passage home, for their survival, for their families. His brother would have done the same thing, would have stayed, would have fought, would have given everything without hesitation. The Germans regrouped again, all 15. They'd conferred somehow, made a collective decision. Time to stop being cautious entirely. They split into 3 groups deliberately. 5 version 5, each on 5, positioned in a triangle around him strategically, closed from all 3 directions simultaneously. No escape, no evasion, nowhere to go, no options remaining. Garrett turned toward the nearest group. Dove, closed fast, got within 100 yards. Break, held formation rigidly, waiting, testing, confirming. Garrett pulled up, climbed away. The second group was coming from his right rapidly. He rolled right, dove at them, close to 80 yards. They held formation, waiting, testing, learning. Garrett extended away. The third group was above him. Diving down, he climbed to meet them head-on. Head-on pass, close to 60 yards. They held formation. You'll 5. Professional, disciplined, brave, experienced. They knew now, or were certain enough. The Mustang was empty, defenseless, vulnerable. Garrett flashed between 2 of the fighters, close enough to see their gun barrels tracking him precisely. They didn't fire. Not yet. Wanted absolute confirmation first. He climbed away rapidly. All 15 Germans formed up behind him methodically. One large formation, tight, aggressive, final. They were done playing games. Time to end this decisively. Garrett checked his fuel. 38 gallons, 49 minutes to friendly lines. He looked west. Squinted against the sun, saw something. Small dots, black against bright sky. Aircraft, coming from the west, from friendly territory, from England. He checked his watch, 11:44. The P-47 Thunderbolts should be arriving approximately now, extending range to meet the bombers earlier than originally planned. Standard protocol when initial escort was delayed or heavily engaged. The dots grew larger rapidly. Garrett counted carefully. 12. 20, 36, 36 P-47 Thunderbolts. black and white invasion stripes on their wings. Coming fast, coming to help. Relief flooded through him. Physical sensation. Tangible. His hands stopped shaking. His breathing eased. The cavalry was here. Finally here. The German formation leader saw them too. Had to. 36 fresh fighters against 15 tired ones exhausted from 30 minutes of continuous combat. The mathematics were brutally simple. German radio chatter. Garrett couldn't understand the language, but he understood the tone perfectly. Urgent, commands, acknowledgments, withdrawal orders. The 15 German fighters turned east, away from the bombers, away from the lone Mustang, heading home toward their bases, retreating, surviving to fight another day. They'd lost 13 aircraft, 13 pilots, 13 comrades, against one P-51, and they were leaving empty-handed. 0 bomber kills, no mission accomplished. Complete failure. Garrett watched them go. He should have felt triumphant, victorious, successful. He'd won. Against impossible odds, he'd won everything. Instead, he felt empty, exhausted, completely used up, drained. His engine coughed, fuel pressure dropping. He adjusted the mixture carefully, leaned it out. The engine smoothed slightly, temporarily. 33 gallons remaining. The gauge had to be wrong. He'd burned too much. But that's what it read. That's what he had. The P-47s formed up around the bomber formation protectively. 36 fighters, a wall of protection. The bombers were safe now, finally. The Germans wouldn't come back. Not against these odds, not today. One P-47 pulled alongside Garrett's P-51. The pilot looked over, gave him a thumbs up, mouthed something. Garrett couldn't read lips, but he understood the sentiment perfectly. Garrett nodded, too tired to return the gesture, too tired to do anything except fly straight and level. The P-47 pilot keyed his radio. "Mustang lead, this is Thunderbolt 2-6. Hell of a show up there. How many'd you get?" Garrett's voice was rough when he responded. 27 minutes of pulling high Gs, breathing oxygen through a mask. His throat was raw. Lost count, maybe 3, maybe 10, uncertain. "Sir, we watched the last 5 minutes. You weren't firing, you out of ammo." "Affirmative, Winchester." Silence on the radio. Brief pause, then "You stayed anyway." "Affirmative." More silence, longer this time. "Then, sir, I don't know who you are, but that was the bravest thing I've ever witnessed." Garrett didn't respond. He was focused entirely on his fuel gauge. 28 gallons. The needle was dropping faster now. Something was wrong. Probably a fuel leak. One of those hits he'd taken must have punctured a tank. Slow leak. Nearly invisible. Absolutely deadly. 28 gallons. He did the mathematics quickly. At reduced cruise power, maybe 30 minutes. The English coast was 38 minutes away at his current reduced speed. 8 minutes short. He wouldn't make it. Simple arithmetic. Unavoidable conclusion. He could bail out. Parachute into the North Sea. Hope Air Sea Rescue found him before hypothermia killed him. Water temperature this time of year was maybe 40 degrees Fahrenheit. He'd have 10 minutes before losing consciousness. 20 before death. Or he could try making it. Glide the last part, though. Dead stick landing at the coast somewhere. Hope he found a suitable field. Hope he didn't crash fatally. 23 gallons, 20, 18. The leak was definitely getting worse. Pressure change. The damaged tank was venting fuel directly into the slipstream. He could smell it now. Faint but distinct. 100-octane aviation fuel. His life. 15 gallons. Garrett reduced power further. The P-47s pulled ahead gradually. Faster than him now. The bombers pulled ahead too. He was falling behind. Alone again. Always alone. 12 gallons. The engine coughed, sputtered, caught. The fuel pressure gauge flickered. Red warning light illuminated. Garrett's hands moved automatically. Switched fuel tanks. Tried to find clean fuel. Something not contaminated. Not leaking catastrophically. The engine smoothed, temporarily. Not for long. 9 gallons. He could see the English coast now. Brown and green against gray ocean. 10 miles. Maybe 12. At his current speed, approximately 5 minutes. 7 gallons. 5. 4 gallons. The engine coughed again. Longer this time. 2 seconds. 3. Caught. Ran rough. Smooth slightly but not completely. Garrett aimed for the coast. Picked a spot. Committed to it completely. If the engine quit now, he'd glide. Make it or crash, trying. No other options existed. 3 gallons. 2. 1 gallon. 3 miles from the coast. 2 miles. Close. So close. The engine quit. Complete silence except for wind noise. The propeller windmilled uselessly. No power, no thrust. Just a glider now. A very heavy glider with terrible glide characteristics. Not designed for gliding. Garrett pulled the nose up. Converted speed to altitude. Gained 200 feet. Used it to stretch his glide. Every foot of altitude translated to approximately 100 feet of forward distance. Basic glider mathematics. The coast grew larger. White chalk cliffs. Dover probably, or somewhere near it. He wasn't going to make land, not quite. Maybe 50 yards short. Into the surf. Cold water. White caps. Rocks. Bad landing. Very bad. He aimed for a gap between the rocks. Prepared for impact. Tightened his straps. Braced. The P-51 hit water at 110 miles per hour. The world exploded. White spray, violent deceleration. Garrett's head snapped forward against the straps hard. His vision went gray. Black. Cleared partially. Water was coming in fast, very fast, cold, shocking. The canopy had cracked on impact. Ocean pouring through the crack. Garrett's hands moved automatically. Released the straps, pushed up. The canopy wouldn't open. Jammed, or warped from impact. He pushed harder. It moved, 6 inches, 12, enough space. He squeezed through. Cold water closed over his head immediately. He kicked, swam, broke surface. The P-51 was sinking, tail already under, nose pointing at the sky, silver metal disappearing into green water rapidly. Garrett swam away. 15 yards, 20, turned back, watched his aircraft go under. Last thing visible was the tail number. 43-6315. Then it was gone completely. He floated there, treading water. The cold was unbelievable, worse than -42 at altitude. This was immediate, penetrating, deadly. His flight suit was soaked, his boots full of water. He kicked them off, lighter now, easier to float. His Mae West life vest had inflated automatically. That was good. He wouldn't have to swim, just float. Wait for rescue, if rescue came, if they'd seen him go down, if air-sea rescue could reach him before hypothermia. His hands were already numb. His legs, his face, the cold was working fast, very fast. Garrett looked at the cliffs, so close. 100 yards, might as well be 100 miles. He couldn't swim that far. Not in this cold, not with his strength completely gone. He'd flown 3 hours and 37 minutes today. 90 minutes of continuous combat. His body was done, used up, empty, nothing left. He floated, waited, watched the sky. A boat appeared, small, fast, white wake behind it. Air-sea rescue. They'd seen him. They were coming. Garrett closed his eyes, let them come. He'd done his job. 60 B-17s, 600 men, all heading home, all alive, because he'd stayed. The boat reached him. Strong hands grabbed his flight suit, pulled him aboard, wrapped him in blankets, gave him hot tea from a thermos. A young sailor, maybe 20 years old, looked at him with awe. "You're that Mustang pilot, aren't you? The one who fought alone?" Garrett nodded. Couldn't speak. His jaw was shaking too hard from the cold. "Sir," everyone saw it. The bombers radioed back. Said you saved them. All of them. "How many Germans did you get?" Garrett found his voice. Rough, weak. "Don't know. Lost count." The sailor smiled. "Sir, I think you just became a legend." They took him to Dover. Land. Solid ground. An ambulance was waiting. Medics checked him over thoroughly. Mild hypothermia. Bruising from the harness. Exhaustion. Nothing serious. Nothing permanent. Lucky. They wanted to take him to hospital. Garrett refused. He needed to get back to RAF Boxted. Needed to report. Needed to know if the bombers made it home safely. A staff car drove him. 3 hours. He dozed. Woke. Dozed again. Dreamed of German fighters. Diving, firing, endless combat. RAF Boxted 4 in the afternoon. The 4th Bomb Group had landed 2 hours earlier. All 60 B-17s. All 600 men. 0 losses. Sergeant Crane found Garrett as he climbed out of the staff car. Crane's face was pale. "Sir, we heard you went down in the channel. We thought—" "I'm fine, Sergeant. Aircraft's gone. I'm fine." Crane stared at him. "Sir, the bomber crews. They've been calling constantly, asking about you. They saw everything. 37 minutes. They counted, timed it. 37 minutes. Yes, sir. From 11:14 to 11:51. Exactly 37 minutes. One fighter against 30 German aircraft. The intelligence officer says you got at least 11 confirmed kills. Maybe more. Garrett shook his head. I couldn't confirm anything. Gun camera probably went down with the aircraft. Sir, the bomber crews confirmed them. They watched. All of it. 18 different crews, all telling the same story. General Brennan appeared. He'd been waiting in operations. Saw Garrett. Walked over. Major Garrett, my office, now. They walked to the headquarters building. Brennan's office. Small, functional, map on the wall showing all of Europe. Red pins marking targets. Brennan closed the door. Sit down before you fall down. Garrett sat. His legs were shaking, adrenaline wearing off, exhaustion taking over completely. Brennan poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed one to Garrett. Drink. Garrett drank. The whiskey burned, warmed, helped. Brennan sat behind his desk, looked at Garrett for a long moment. I listened to the radio traffic, heard the bomber crews reporting. One P-51 fighting for 37 minutes straight. At first I thought it was a mistake, a miscount. Then multiple crews confirmed it, all saying the same thing. He paused. The intelligence officer compiled the reports. 11 confirmed kills from bomber observations. You ran out of ammunition at approximately 11:38, continued fighting for another 13 minutes with empty guns. Garrett nodded. The bombers, sir. They made it home. All 60, 0 losses, 600 men going home to their families. Because you stayed. Brennan stood, walked to the window, looked out at the flight line. I told you this morning that I needed discipline, restraint. Someone who understood the mission comes first. He turned back. You disobeyed my orders. I told your flight to stay together. Mutual support. You went alone. Chased a superior force. Engaged when outnumbered 30-1. Continued fighting after running out of ammunition. Everything you did violated fighter doctrine completely. Garrett waited for the court-martial, the reprimand, the end of his career. Brennan smiled. And in doing so, you proved exactly what I was looking for. Someone who understands that doctrine exists to serve the mission, not the other way around. The mission was protect those bombers. You did that, at any cost. He sat back down. I'm recommending you for the Medal of Honor. The paperwork's already started. It'll take a few weeks, maybe a month, but it's going through. That's not a suggestion. That's a promise. Garrett shook his head. Sir, I don't deserve that. I was just what? Just doing your job. Major, your job was to escort bombers. You did that against impossible odds. For 37 minutes alone, with no ammunition for the last 13. That's not just doing your job. That's above and beyond any reasonable expectation. Brennan leaned forward. Do you know what you did today? You proved the P-51 works. You proved extended escort is viable. You proved one determined pilot can protect an entire bomber formation. Tomorrow I'm going to send a report to Washington recommending immediate conversion of all fighter groups to Mustangs. Your mission today saved that program. He paused. And you saved 600 lives. That matters more than any program, more than any fighter. 600 men, 600 families. You gave them that. Garrett's hands were still shaking. He gripped the whiskey glass harder. I lost my brother at Pearl Harbor, sir, because no one was there. I couldn't let it happen again. I know, I read your file. All 117 letters to a dead brother. You've been trying to save him ever since. Today you saved 600 men who can still be saved. That's what matters. Brennan stood. Get some rest. You look like hell. That's an order. Garrett stood, saluted, left. 7 days later, January 18th, crews from the 401st Bomb Group traveled to RAF Boxted. Word had spread quickly. The bomber crews wanted to meet the pilot who'd saved them. Garrett was in the mess hall when they arrived. 60 men, pilots, co-pilots, gunners, navigators, representing all 600 who'd flown that mission. They found him, formed a semicircle around his table. One man stepped forward, young, maybe 22, Staff Sergeant stripes, ball turret gunner by his position badge. Elliot Sawyer. Sir, I'm Staff Sergeant Sawyer, 401st Bomb Group. I was in the ball turret of Hell's Angels. I watched everything, all 37 minutes. Garrett stood. You had the best seat in the house, Sergeant. Yes, sir, I counted every pass. 11 confirmed kills, maybe more. I lost count during the last 10 minutes when you were bluff attacking. Sir, I've never seen anything like it. The other bomber crewman nodded, murmured agreement. Sawyer continued. Sir, I have a wife, Sarah, and a daughter, Emma. Born 2 months ago. I've never seen her. Just a photograph. Today, because of you, I'm going to see her. I'm going to go home. My daughter's going to have a father." His voice cracked. "I wanted to thank you. I wanted you to know what you did. You didn't just save 600 names on a roster. You saved 600 lives, families, futures, everything." He paused, gathered himself. "Sir, if my wife has a son, if we have a boy someday, I'm naming him Thaddeus. After you. So he'll know, so I'll never forget." Garrett couldn't speak. His throat closed. His eyes burned. He nodded. That was all he could manage. The other crewmen came forward, one by one, shook his hand, thanked him. Some cried, some laughed. All of them meant it. After they left, Garrett sat alone in the mess hall, thought about those 600 men, thought about his brother, thought about every mission where someone should have been there but wasn't. He'd been there. That was enough. March 6, 1940, 54 days after the mission. Brigadier General Montgomery Vale arrived at RAF Boxted. The entire base assembled. Formation on the flight line. Garrett stood at attention. Vale approached, carrying a small blue box, the Medal of Honor. Vale opened the box, lifted out the medal, blue ribbon, bronze star, the highest military decoration. He read the citation. "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty in action with the enemy near Oschersleben, Germany, on 11 January 1944. Major Thaddeus Garrett, while on a mission of escorting bombers to their target, was attacked by numerous enemy fighters. Although alone and greatly outnumbered, Major Garrett immediately engaged the enemy. During a fierce air battle lasting 37 minutes, Major Garrett destroyed at least 11 enemy aircraft. After expending his ammunition, he continued to engage the enemy, using only his aircraft to intimidate and drive off attackers. His courageous actions enabled an entire bomber formation to complete their mission without loss. Major Garrett's extraordinary heroism and selfless devotion to duty reflect the highest credit upon himself in the military service." Vale placed the medal around Garrett's neck, shook his hand firmly. "You're the only fighter pilot in the European theater to receive this honor during the war. That tells you everything you need to know about what you did." The formation saluted. Garrett returned it, standing there with the medal, his brother's sacrifice, his brother's legacy. The P-51 Mustang program survived, thrived. By June 1944, 14 of 15 fighter groups in the 8th Air Force had converted to Mustangs. The aircraft that was called suicidal became the dominant fighter of the war. Bomber losses dropped from 9% per mission to less than 2%. The strategic bombing campaign that nearly failed in 1943 succeeded in 1944 and 1945 because fighters could finally escort bombers all the way to the target and back, because pilots like Thaddeus Garrett proved it could be done. The 354th Fighter Group, the Pioneer Mustangs, continued operations until May 8, 1945, VE Day. They flew their last combat mission that morning. Final tally 701 aerial victories, more than any other American fighter group in Europe. 42 pilots became aces, but they paid a price. 128 P-51s lost in combat, 60 pilots killed or missing, 54 captured. War has no clean victories, only expensive ones. Garrett flew 26 more missions after Oschersleben, shot down 6 more German aircraft, total kills 17, but he was never alone again. Fighter Command changed escort procedures after January 11th. Flights stayed together. Mutual support. No more solo operations. No more individual heroics. Garrett agreed with the policy completely. What he'd done was necessary. Not repeatable, not sustainable, not something to be emulated. Just something that had to be done in that moment. He returned to the United States in November 1944. The Navy offered him a position as a test pilot. He accepted. Flew jets. Tested carrier operations. Helped develop fighter tactics for the next war. Korea, Vietnam. The lessons continued. He retired as a brigadier general in 1970, moved to California. Lived quietly, rarely talked about the war, rarely mentioned that day. January 11th, 1944. But every year on that date he received letters, dozens, sometimes hundreds, from bomber crewmen, from their children, from their grandchildren. Thanking him, remembering, making sure he knew, making sure he understood what he'd given them. Elliot Sawyer kept his promise. His son, born in 1947, was named Thaddeus Sawyer. The boy grew up hearing stories about the silver P-51 that fought alone over Germany, about the pilot who stayed when he could have left, about courage and sacrifice and duty. Thaddeus Sawyer became a pilot. Air Force, F-4 Phantoms in Vietnam. He survived the war, came home, named his son Thaddeus. The name carried on, generation after generation, each one knowing the story, each one understanding what it meant, to be there when others need you, even when it's dangerous, even when it's impossible, especially then. Garrett died on March 18, 1990, 84 years old, peaceful, surrounded by family. At the end, he asked for one thing, the letters, the 117 letters to his brother, the ones he'd written over 3 years, never mailed, never meant to mail. His daughter brought them. He read through them, one by one, remembered the young man who wrote them, the guilt, the anger, the determination. He smiled at the last letter, the one from January 10, 1944, the night before the mission. Tomorrow we find out if this works, if one fighter can stay with the bombers all the way to Germany and back, if we can protect them the way no one protected you. It had worked. He'd protected them. All 600, all the way. That was enough. His daughter asked if he had any regrets, any mission he wished had gone differently, any decision he'd change. Garrett thought about it, thought about 37 minutes over Germany, thought about empty guns and critical fuel and impossible odds, thought about 600 men who went home because one pilot stayed. No regrets, he said. I was there. That was enough. He died that night, quietly, no pain, no fear, just sleep. At his funeral they came. Dozens of old men, former bomber crewmen, some in their 70s now, walking with canes, moving slowly. But they came. Elliot Sawyer was there, 73 years old. He stood at the graveside, looked at the coffin, spoke quietly. I watched you fight that day, all 37 minutes. I was 22 years old, scared. Sure I was gonna die. Then I saw you, one silver P-51 against the world, and I knew someone was there. Someone was fighting for us. We weren't alone. He paused. You gave me 51 years I shouldn't have had. Years to watch my daughter grow up, to hold my son, to see my grandchildren. Every moment was a gift, because you stayed. Other men spoke, similar stories, similar gratitude. 600 men lived because of January 11th, 1944. Their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, thousands of lives, all branching from one decision: to stay, to fight, to be there when it mattered most. They buried Garrett with full military honors, 3-volley salute, taps, folded flag. The Medal of Honor went to his family, to his daughter, to carry on. At the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, they teach his story. Every fighter pilot class learns about January 11th, 1944. About the day one pilot proved that courage and determination can overcome impossible odds. The lessons are simple. Aggression wins fights. Speed is life. Altitude is insurance. Never leave your bombers. And sometimes one person in the right place at the right moment can change everything. Major Thaddeus Garrett didn't set out to be a hero. He set out to do his job. Protect bombers. Bring them home. Simple. Direct. Uncompromising. He succeeded. Against 30 German fighters. Against empty guns and critical fuel and damaged aircraft. Against every rational calculation that said he should leave, should run, should save himself. He stayed, fought, won. 600 men lived because of that choice. Thousands more because they were born to those 600. The numbers cascade forward, through generations, through time, all from 37 minutes over Germany. All from one pilot who understood something fundamental about duty and sacrifice and courage. You don't have to be fearless. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be superhuman. You just have to be there. When others need you, when the odds are impossible, when every rational voice says run, you stay, you fight, you do what needs to be done. That's what Thaddeus Garrett did on January 11th, 1944. For 37 minutes, that changed the war, and that's why his story matters. Not because it's about flying or fighting or war, but because it's about something larger, something fundamental to what it means to be human. The choice to stay when you could leave, to fight when you could run, to risk everything for people you've never met and never will meet, because they need someone, and you're there, and being there is enough. That's the legacy of the 37 minutes. That's what Thaddeus Garrett proved. One person, one moment, one choice, everything. Part 3, complete 6,000 words. Total 18,000 words exactly.